Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Bienvenue à
Good afternoon to you all. Welcome to Stage A for a roundtable that's going to be extremely interesting. We have very high-class panelists on working with purpose, working with objectives, sustainable development goals, and how can we reinforce these with the private sector to reach the SDGs by 2030.
Welcome to all of you for this Work with Purpose roundtable with prestigious guests and speakers. It is all about work with purpose, which purpose reinforcing the role of companies to reach the SDG by 2030. So I am very glad to have with us Marlène Schiappa. She is Minister for Social and Solidarity Economy and the CSOs, civil society organizations, life in Paris, in France. She has been Minister of Gender Equality and also for citizenship in the government. We also have with us Sigrid van Aken. She is the CEO of Postcode Lottery Group. We will be very pleased to know better this concept. Philippe Heim, président du directoire de la Banque Postale, chairman of the board of Postal Bank. Majun, we have him in line with us. Very welcome, Majun. You are the director of the IPE, Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs. You are online with us from Beijing. Fabienne Michaud, you are the director of SDG Impact, which is an initiative we will be very glad to know better from you, from the UNDP, the UN Development Program. And now on, we will go on with the first question to Minister. Marlène Schiappa, vous êtes secrétaire d'État auprès de la Première ministre chargée de l'économie sociale et
Secretary of State for
solidaire et de la
Social and
vie
Solidarity
associative.
Economy and Community Activities.
Vous êtes, depuis 2017,
You, since 2017, have been minister within this republic. You have pushed feminist diplomacy as Secretary of State for Gender Equality. According to you, what are the incentives that governments, and in particular the French government, could implement for the private sector to mobilize their action towards reaching the SDGs? You have the floor. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you to the Paris Peace Forum for organizing this mobilization, this conference on peace. I'm thrilled to be a part of this roundtable with these experts from all backgrounds and areas of expertise. Now, the President of the Republic, Emmanuel Macron, and the previous government of Monsieur Macron wanted to push the role of the private sector and businesses to achieve increased human rights, gender equality, increased solidarity, and promote sustainable development. So many laws were adopted very recently in this regard. France is the first country to have banned the destruction of not unsold goods. So it's a very strong measure. It is fundamental for the commitment of businesses. So in terms of gender equality, many French businesses have mobilized very strongly during the lockdowns, during the pandemic. For instance, in shopping centers, lots of organizations and even police forces were mobilized to support women that were locked in with their abusers, their partners or husbands. So this was a very strong demonstration of cooperation between the private sector and the government. Furthermore, we have created an index, a gender equality index, to support businesses, to encourage them to uphold the law. Our labour code in France is extremely precise and has very precise provisions to support and protect women. Now, for 40 years, I'm going to be 40 years old, so for 40 years now there have been gender equal pay laws in place. But of course, it's not fully achieved in France or anywhere, so this is of course a concern. And lastly, to answer this first question regarding the solidarity and social economy, we are fully committed to such an economy, and we are going beyond the obligations set out by the government to reach the SDGs. So when it comes to the solidarity economy and cooperatives, for instance, and other types of organizations that are trying to address internal pay gaps within their structures, that are trying to go beyond profits and try to reinvest profits and try to invest in internal democracy, where one worker has one voice. All businesses are all of these businesses that are involved in such CSR policies are being supported. We're also trying to measure the impact and the commitment of businesses beyond financial commitments. In fact, we were speaking about it today. There are banks that are choosing to go beyond legal obligations and to set themselves SDGs, their own sustainable development goals. And I think it's important to name them and honour them, and we have one example of that here today. Thank you, Minister, for this very thorough and comprehensive presentation. Now, my question will be based on what you said about the social and solidarity economy. So this is a very vast area. So the activities are going on beyond the impact of the on environment and social, and go beyond the ESG framework, the environmental, social, and corporate governance framework. So this inclusive approach that is the solidarity economy is very interesting, and this is the chance for me to look to Sigrid van Aken.
Which is a European company that operates charity lotteries to raise funds for charity organizations and social initiatives around the world. So we will be very happy to hear more about the Postcode Lottery Group. As you said, as you will say, it is the third largest private donor in the world and donating 850 million euros per year. My question is how the popular crowdfunding of PLG could help SDG achievement, how could we direct them towards this goal, and how can companies labor their actions in favor or towards SDGs?
Thank you very much. And also from my side, first of all, to the organization of this forum, my compliments. So far, I have been very inspired, and it's great to be together with so many people that are committed to come into action and to achieve to all the goals. So let me first share with you what really struck me in the past 2 days. First of all, that was the speech of David Beasley, when he first of all said that all the solutions are there. And if you want to meet an entrepreneur, there's no need to go to Harvard, but that you can enter in a conversation with an African woman, for instance, or with other people in the civil society, because they know exactly what needs to be done. And I think also at this forum, at the space of solutions, there were 60 initiatives are present there and show their work. And I think all these people are representatives of the civil society worldwide, whether it's NGOs or community initiatives or social entrepreneurs. They are the people who know exactly what needs to be done. The civil society is a force for good and a force for change, and that's really what inspires me personally. Secondly, one thing that really struck me is that in many panels and many of the discussions in the past 2 days, the point has been raised that there is a need for much more unrestricted and flexible funding. And well, actually that really makes me happy, because I think a lot of people who are part of the civil society, they know that this is really needed in the world of today, where there's no time to lose. The solutions are there. So we need this flexible funding to have this accelerator effect and to make sure that all the goals can be achieved. So these things actually have a close relationship with what we do, because we are a company with a social mission. We are set up to support the civil society. And so in everything we do, the charities are at the heart of our activities. And so we are a fundraiser. We do that with a safe game of chance. And thanks to our 13 million players across Europe, we are this private donor. And so as a funder, we believe in this unrestricted, flexible funding. And actually, we are in long-term partnership. We enter in long-term partnership with hundreds of NGOs across Europe, but also, of course, many of them work internationally. And they are active in all these areas, whether it's climate change, climate adaptation, biodiversity, human rights, also poverty alleviation, not only abroad, also in Europe, social cohesion, all these areas where social or the civil society plays a crucial role. And so after now 30 years of existence of our company and having this funding model, we have approximately donated 12 billion euros in this way, unrestricted and flexible. So my advice today to companies or private foundations is really follow this funding model of unrestricted, flexible funding. And you will experience that when you enter into long-term partnerships, this is really adding value, not only for the cause that you're standing for, but also for your own company. And so I believe that this was really a very positive takeaway for me personally in this forum. And maybe to end, I think we all ask ourselves the question, what can I do more? And as a company, we do that, of course, also. And in these unprecedented times, we do a lot of course, emergency funding. And, well, it's needed to food banks, refugee help, also poverty alleviation, as I said. But on the longer term, I think we, as a fundraiser, would love to do more. And, of course, everywhere in the world, we would love to collaborate with the civil society. Like, for instance, here in France, we could collaborate with the French civil society. And if you would have a charity lottery license, we did a calculation and we found out we could raise approximately the exciting amount of 1 billion euros each and every year for social initiatives here locally in France or abroad. So I think that's exciting and positive to end with.
Thank you very much. So you really emphasize on 3 words: unrestricted, flexible funding, and also civil society and social issues. I would probably ask you to tell us more about how you really monitor your investments, but this is for later on. Philippe Heim, vous êtes le président du directoire de la Banque Postale, vous êtes banquier.
Philippe Heim, you are a banker. You are the chairman of the executive board of La Banque Postale. So maybe in a few words you could introduce us to the Banque Postale and how you, as a banker, how you think the Banque Postale could work towards reaching the SDGs. What is the impact of the SDGs on your business model, in fact, as well? Thank you. I'm thrilled to be at this Peace Forum. I'm very impressed by all the willingness that I've seen throughout this forum. So people that are committed to peace and the green transition. So very briefly, the Banque Postale is a very young bank. We're only 16 years old. So it's a financial institution that was born out of the Post. So the Post Circle. So it's been around for centuries. It was founded on closeness. There are 17,000 post offices across the country. Postmen go to each house every day. So we have 20 million bank clients in France and 60 million around the world in terms and generally for insurance services. So banks are stakeholders and they have a really strong role to play. So banks, insurance companies and hedge funds and pension funds, we are at the crossroads of funding, so through credit, but also through savings. So this is the case in Europe. The structure of our financial markets mean that 80% of funding towards businesses go through banks. So it's the opposite in the United States, where the figures are reversed.
Par l'allocation de l'épargne qui nous est confiée, nous avons un rôle majeur à jouer.
Our role in banking services, we do have an important role to play.
Nous avons tout d'abord transcrit nos engagements dans une raison d'être.
We've translated our commitments into our raison d'être. We've become a purpose-driven company in France. Our purpose is to work towards just transition. And it is an important concept. It means we work not only to further the cause of the environment, to limit the deterioration of the environment due to climate change. It also means that we need to support this transition by keeping in mind social and territorial cohesion strongly in that process. And so I think clearly that there are a lot of challenging questions around the role of financial institutions. And from the get-go, we wanted to prove that what we do is not greenwashing, but is tangible and measurable. And that is why last year, during the Finance Day, we announced that we would, by 2030, renounce oil and gas use. We also had our trajectory be certified by the ASBTI, an independent at arm's length institution. We're the first bank to be certified. And there's something else that we believe. It's not enough to just ensure you have a green track record, but we need to also support our clients in this transition by offering specific types of products and services, including our clients in that process. I'll stop here. I'm already short of time. Thank you very much, Philippe. Indeed, it is essential to listen to how to the way investments and your purpose can lead to directing the economy towards goals that are compatible with the just transition. In other words, it is important to ensure we bring about together the economic, social, environmental in a coherent fashion.
Director of the Institute of Public and Environment Affairs, author from long time ago on these issues with the first book on China's water crisis. You led the development of China's first environmental public database in 2006 and also other methodology with a mobile app that visualizes environmental and climate data. You help the public monitor corporate emission and use micro-reports against environmental violations. And you were named in 2006 as one of the Time magazine's world's 100 most influential people. And since then, you have a long list of prizes at international and national level. We would be very happy if you could explain to us in a few words the methodology used by IPE and its activities, and also tell us how, when you are dealing with so many companies, I read 20,000 companies in China, how can you be sure to be exempt of any accusation of greenwashing? How can that be countered? Can you please explain to us?
Thank you, Mrs. Kava. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this important forum virtually. We have been trying to address greenwashing, as you mentioned, through transparency over the past 16 years. In China, as the factory of the world, hundreds of millions of people have been put out of poverty. But in the meantime, hundreds of millions have been exposed to air, water, and soil pollution. So when we try to engage with the multinational and local brands, which are major emitters, contribute to the emission, many would argue that over the past 20 to 10 years, they had green policy, but in China they did not know who are polluting and who are not, so they would only buy from the cheapest. And it created extra incentive for the local suppliers to cut corners and try to win their contract. But I can tell them that I had a map that could help them. As you mentioned, we created the Blue Map database and compiling all these records of violations. At the beginning, very limited level of transparency in China. But so far, from 2000 in the first year and today, over 2.6 million records of violations. Through investigations, we managed to build a link between multinational and local brands and polluting factories, and developed a green supply chain index. And over the past 9 years, continue to assess the performance of the major brands. I'm happy to see increasingly they began to compare their list of suppliers with our list of violators, and motivated so far, as you mentioned, more than 20,000 companies to openly address their violations. But today we're facing, our mission of environmental quality improvement is far from being accomplished. And in the meantime, China and the whole world is facing pressing climate challenge. So we now extended the tracking of the companies to more than 10 million of them, and try to color code them based on their environmental performance. And recently we have launched a new initiative called the Global Corporate Accountability Map. And from Paris to Glasgow, so many companies, brands and investors have made their own zero carbon commitment, but how much of that have been really put into action? And so we have listed, highlighted not just their commitment, but provide a progress bar to see how much that has been achieved. First round, 1,000 brands, 500 globally, 500 locally listed companies on the map. So I hope to have the chance to work together with all the distinguished guests and participants on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Majun. We are very much impressed because as soon as we reach the huge territory of China, all figures are multiplied by 10,000 and 1,000, and it is very important for us to know all the issues you are covering about, the global supply chains and the green impact of the activity. Now I want to give the floor to Fabienne Michaud. You are the director of SDG Impact, part of the UN Development Programme Sustainable Finance Hub. You are a lead developer of the SDG Impact standards, independent and voluntary management standards designed to guide businesses and investors on their sustainability journeys. So with your 30 years of experience, starting with the G7 Impact Task Force and then G20 and now at the UN level, what incentives do you think for private sector actors should be mobilized so that their action goes towards these goals? Can you explain it to us? Thank you.
Sure, thank you for that. And I guess in terms of my experience, most of my experience is actually in the private markets. So I spent most of my career with S&P Global in the credit ratings division. So bringing together that private sector and now the development sector side. I think that when we look at incentives for for businesses and investors to move towards incorporating sustainability and the SDGs into their decision making, I think the most important incentive is business survivability and future performance. That we're now at a point where I think the world has changed, and it's becoming increasingly obvious that sustainability is a major disruptor for businesses, both in terms of anticipating and managing future risks, but also in terms of identifying opportunities and really looking to capitalise on those emerging trends. I think as one of the speakers said yesterday, the business models of today are not the business models of the future and tomorrow, and there's going to be a lot of disruption as we move through that process. And increasingly, sustainability is a core competency for organisations, but also a competitive differentiator, and we're starting to see that more and more in how companies position themselves. I think from an incentives perspective, it's also really important to think about the role that government can play in terms of creating the enabling environment, and also the a level playing field for organisations. We see, I think, a number of leaders really trying to lead in this space, but perhaps not as enabled as they could be, and facing barriers and challenges, which it would be nice to see some of those cleared. On the issue of just transition, I think that one of the other things we really need to think about, particularly in context of the climate emergency, that if we want to achieve a just transition, we have to act now. I think we're at the stage where every second we lose is closing down options and possibilities and flexibility to manage this in a planned and controlled way. And if we don't do this, we're going to maximise disruption and dislocation and human suffering and economic fallout. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Fabienne. I just pick up from what you said, the kind of talk you have with the governments about enabling environment, how we can provide companies with an enabling environment. But I also heard something about level playing field. So my question to Marlène Schiappa, Madame la Ministre, on vient de nous parler de...
So a question to you, Marlène Schiappa, Minister. We've just heard about enabling environments for businesses to go in this direction, but also to have a level playing field, because there's unfair competition. So now we're looking at the global stage. You've already showcased your great talent, on the feminist issues, to carry out this message at the international level. In your view, how globally can we carry out these challenges and express them? Thank you. Well, I think that issues surrounding these SDGs are truly intertwined. When one speaks about climate issues, it's intertwined with gender issues and the status of women. With the President Macron, we're able to travel in Africa and in some rural regions. And in these regions, women explain to us clearly that in villages, because of climate deregulation, water resources are becoming scarcer, and it means they have to walk longer and make more efforts to have access to drinking water for their family. It is in this mindset that the President of France launched here at the Paris Peace Forum a call, a funding shock for the benefit of the African continent, so that we can truly take stock of what is happening globally. And so this social and solidarity economy is fully part and parcel of our approach. It can be inclusive and solidarity economy only with other countries, continents, and other economic models. And that is precisely why France is advocating for the adoption within the UN of a resolution on inclusive and social economy to share this model with other countries. You were kind enough to remind this audience that I was a minister during the previous 5-year government term, and then I was no longer a minister, so I wanted to create a social business. I wanted to go to the United States as any woman in Europe of my generation who dreams to go and find investors in New York. I was very fortunate to do so, to be welcomed by statisticians at the UN to work on tools to measure impact. But when I was trying to explain my project, true enough, it was hard for me to explain to international investors and stakeholders the idea of a company with an impact, with a mission or purpose, which was created by the previous government, as well explaining a social business. In fact, sometimes my feeling is that all those not-for-profit companies are difficult to explain, especially when their business model does not depend upon the creation of or the generation of profit or that are based on redistributing profits and are based on social aspects and inclusivity and solidarity. The OECD and other bodies have worked on this resolution. I welcome it, and I hope we can work with other countries, with Spain, especially to raise momentum about this resolution. We also need countries of the French-speaking world, of the African continent, and we need the countries from the South America. All those countries need to be committed to work with us to share this definition of social and solidarity economy, and this very specific kind of economy that we need, which by choosing this economy leads to some constraints for the benefit of each and every one, and to respect the objectives set out in the SDGs.
Thank you very much. And what I take away from this is that to be able to benefit from a level playing field on all continents, we have to begin with defining what it is we do, what the scope is, so that we can then regulate that scope to have indeed a level playing field. And now, Sigrid van Aken,
you explained to us the purposes you follow with your, investing the fundings that you gather with the lottery, the charity lottery organizations. Can you explain to us how you monitor these recipients of your fundings? What are the criteria on which you base the way you are choosing these aims or these causes? And do you find that there could be a kind of rivalry or competition between causes? Sometimes people that would tell you poverty is more important, for example, than environmental impact, or would say to you that at the moment it is better to make sure that everybody has fuel to heat her homes, rather than taking into consideration the environmental impact of carbon, fossil energy. So for all these reasons, it would be important, I think, if you explain how the machinery works, in your lottery organizations.
Thank you so much. And you're, of course, touching on the dilemmas that we have to deal with in our everyday work. But as I've said, we are set up to support the civil society in all the areas that the civil society is active, in all these sectors, actually all sectors related to the SDGs. And of course, it's impossible to make a decision between one topic or the other. So we are in a privileged position that we have been building up these relationships, long-term relationships in all these areas. And one of the key criteria that we focus on is the support in society that these initiatives can show. And of course, there are multiple indicators. It could be volunteers, it could be private funding, it could be multiple sources of funding. And so in that sense, we do a due diligence, and then we enter into a long-term partnership. And of course, along the way, things happen, but that's everywhere in society. And we would all believe it's normal for a business to take risks, and sometimes you get a very successful outcome and sometimes not. We believe this should be exactly the same assessment for also the civil society. So in a partnership, our charity partners keep us posted on how things are going. And we believe that if it's based on trust, such a partnership, you really express that you don't want surprises. You want to that they keep you posted. And of course, then it can happen that we are disappointed in a sense, but then it will be on the partnership, or for instance, the charity organization will lose support in society, and then you enter in a new conversation. But of course, this all sounds now very easy. It is, of course, not easy. And I believe that because we are also a fundraiser ourselves, this makes us, we are a social enterprise ourselves in a way. So we can really feel what it's like to be a civil society initiative and the challenge that you are facing. But our fundamental approach is that we are not the experts to do the work in the field. They know much better than we do how to tackle all these issues. And that's the same for all these 60 organizations here present at the forum. They are the entrepreneurs in the area, in the fields around the world. And so if we stick to each other's roles, we believe that's the best way to achieve results.
Thank you very much. So I really appreciated the sincerity of what of your purpose. What I understand is that it is, if you really want to be impactful, it is better if you are part of the family. This is the way you are. You are yourself a social enterprise, which helps. But I also heard the fact that it is important to have support from society. And maybe a third point I will just pick from what you said is about the fact that we have different jobs. And there is a division of role that should be respected. You are the financer, you know what you do, but the entrepreneurs are the experts of their fields, and it is very important to make sure that this division of role is respected. Thank you very much. Philippe Haim, est-ce que je peux aussi vous poser une petite question impertinente?
Ask you a rather cheeky question. So, are you a banker or
vous êtes un homme du cœur?
Are you a charitable organization? Your clients who come to you with their savings. They want to see a return on that investment. So your ethical goals, are they not obstacles for making money?
Alors, nous sommes sans ambiguïté une entreprise commerciale.
Yes, we are clearly a commercial business in a very competitive field. We have, well, in France, we have 5 systemic banks, which are direct rivals.
Vous posez une question qui est très importante,
and this is a very important question you raise.
Dans l'industrie.
And this does lead to some distortion in our industry. What we propose are products, so asset management, it's 100% responsible.
Ce qui est en fait le concept français. Et dans le droit européen,
ESR in European
on
law.
bascule vers ce concept des investissements dit article 8, article 9.
So these are Article 8 and Article 9.
Investissement
So, socially responsible investments,
Donc,
SRI.
nous avons la capacité d'atteindre à la fois du rendement.
So, we provide returns on investment, but also in keeping with the goals that we have set ourselves, which is for a just transition. Over the past 12 months,
c'est clair que des valeurs technologiques, dans la défense, par exemple,
in defense, for example,
c'est le contexte international.
They have risen in value very
D'autres
strongly.
valeurs ont pu souffrir. Et donc, il faut mesurer cette performance
Other
sur le long
values
terme.
have suffered, but you have to have a long-term vision.
Deuxième point, il y a une torsion, il faut en être conscient.
And there
Aux
also
États-Unis
is some
notamment,
distortion. In the
on a
US, for
rappelé par, je peux
example,
citer un nom d'un compétiteur, vous m'autoriserez, qui est BlackRock.
there's
On a rappelé à
BlackRock,
Larry Fink
a
que
rival.
son
Larry
objectif,
Fink was reminded that his
en tout cas
goal
pour vis-à-vis de ses clients, les épargnants, c'était son fiduciary duty, c'est effectivement le rendement.
was
Et que
the yield.
la problématique ESG devait être secondaire.
and that SRI had to come second. And the risk for management in the United States are class actions. And that's why the regulatory framework is extremely important. And I salute the level of conscientiousness in Europe, which allows us to reconcile those two necessities. Profit, yes, but just transition. Thank you very much. Because, yes, you're showing that profits and the just transition aren't necessarily incompatible. But for that, perhaps there have to be special conditions. The long term, you have to have a long-term vision, and maybe the key word is regulations. Regulation of companies, regulation of profits.
Nos concitoyens confient aux établissements bancaires.
To protect the savings that our fellow citizens provide for your care.
You already heard that SDGs are, the minister said it is a whole compact. We know also that when we are talking about corporate social responsibility, there is the word social in it. And also, when we're talking about standards, we are talking about ESG, environment, social, and governance. Could you please tell us, in the institutional landscape you are evolving, have you also counterparts, not only on green, but also on social and governance? Does it exist? Do you know them? And can you just, explain to us if they have such a huge impact as you specialized on green could have on these issues?
Thank you, Mrs. Kava. Yes, we have been paying more attention, increasing attention on CSR first, and in more recent years, ESG, as you mentioned. And ESG standards is being developed in China. The central government also started requiring even the state-owned enterprises to publish their ESG reporting, for example. And we have been trying to extend our digital data-driven solutions to cover more on the social and governance side. For example, our data is now being tapped by China's leading researchers to develop China's air quality health index to help protect public health and community health, and also being tapped by UNICEF to develop a child health index, not just air but water, and also on the ESG ratings side, both local agencies and some of the leading global agencies have tapped into the data, because we're not just gathering the environmental data, but data on for example, work safety and all those accidents, and also the labor safety and occupational health and safety. All this have been put together. There, as you mentioned, the magnitude often becomes bigger in China. We compile some more than 4 million records of those other compliance records, and those data also being widely tapped by the not just by those rating agencies, but also by major banks and listed companies and brands sourcing from China. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just pick from what you said, the major issue of health in relation with environment, but also in workplaces, and what you said about occupational safety and health shows that these issues are very much interlinked. One issue on which I would really praise the German presidency of G7, and hopefully it will also go to G20, is to work about occupational safety and health in the issue of, warming conditions of work now. with the climate change issues, which is a major issue also in all our workplaces today. So thank you very much for what you said. I turn to Fabienne. Fabienne, you said about lots of things about how governments could provide with an enabling environment to help to level playing field, etc. Can you tell us how UNDP and your specific hub in UNDP liaises with company? How do you work with them? And what are the impacts or performances on which you can rely to say, okay, we succeeded to touch base with them and they succeeded to produce impact?
Sure. So I think UNDP historically has had very strong relationships, obviously, with government and policymakers and delivering impact on the ground in the over 170 countries in which we have people on the ground. More recently, and that's that direct capital and direct donor piece. But, with the SDGs, there's a really strong recognition that we can't achieve the SDGs without all actors in the system working together, and that the private sector has a really pivotal role to play. And in part, that's why our initiative and our group was set up within UNDP Sustainable Finance Hub to focus on activating activity and investment towards the SDGs in the private sector. So, when we look at that, we're really looking at that shift from that direct donor capital, which we know is completely insufficient to actually achieve the outcomes that we need, and how we can start leveraging and aligning everybody else's capital to achieve the outcomes that the world needs. And that's really what we've been focused on in terms of what we've been doing over the last 3.5 years. So, within the SDG impact standards, for instance, what we're really trying to achieve is almost a Copernican-like transformation in mindset to really move thinking about sustainability in the SDGs as an add-on to what business gets done, to how all business gets done, and really putting sustainability, the SDGs, and the mechanism for achieving that, managing for impact, at the heart of business purpose and how decisions are made. So very much integral to the value creation process, and being very holistic and systematic in how that happens. I think what we see at the moment is a lot of atomistic approaches where we look at particular financing instruments, or an organisation goes and does a green bond, but not necessarily looking holistically at how sustainability is integrated into all decision making, and there's a focus at the organisational level in terms of creating net positive impact. So that's really what we've done in terms of trying to build this overarching decision making framework to help organisations actually make that transition and do that in a way that's holistic, systematic and accountable, particularly with the assurance framework and seal that we're currently developing and about to start piloting around the standards. In terms of working with organisations with the standards, we've taken the approach that we want to enable and facilitate change as much as possible. So everything that we've developed has been developed as public goods, and they're on the website. We've developed a self-assessment tool to make it easy for people to play with standards. We're obviously very happy to work with organisations, with much smaller organisations. We've done a number of working groups, actually bringing organisations together to create an environment where they can learn from each other, as well as get some input from us along the way. So I think it's a journey. We've also developed an online course called Measuring and Managing Impact for the Sustainable Development Goals, which we developed with Duke University. Again, it's a free course. It provides really good good, foundational grounding in impact measurement and management, both from an investor and an enterprise side. So, we're really looking to step out and help people to, lead their own journeys, not actually interfere in it directly, but provide the tools and resources that they need to take that journey themselves.
Thank you very much, Fabienne. This is a very good illustration that if we want to transform goodwill to impact and purpose, we need instruments, we need empowerment with training, we need assessment, and hopefully you are part of the UN family, so all this is online and public good, so go ahead, guys, and help yourself on their side.
Go forth and prosper and have lots of impact.
Thank you very much. So we are now just at the end of our session. I see one question I will ask to all of you. What is the major lesson you take from, what is the major lesson you will take home back from this round table, if any? It is not compulsory. Est-ce qu'il y a un élément que vous voulez ramener à la maison
a specific
à partir du
takeaway
débat que nous avons eu aujourd'hui?
idea or lesson that you'd like to mention in light of this panel discussion? Up to all of you. Madam Minister, you'd like to start? Very briefly, I would say the need to act together, to pay attention to what is done elsewhere, whether it is government, the private sector, other continents, other countries, other methods. There are always best practices to share and commitments that we can tap into as food for thought. And in fact, in the social and solidarity economy, oftentimes civil society has preceded government action, and government action drew up their legislation based on actions by civil society and other public players. So looking at what others do and their practices is absolutely essential. Thank you.
Yes, sorry.
Sigrid.
I would like to refer to the chair of the forum. He stated on the first day it should all be about action, action, action. And I think if we stay focused on action, many wonderful things can happen if we work together. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Philippe.
Oui,
Thank you, Philippe. Yes, I can only echo what Minister said. Indeed, we're all interconnected, so the solution will be a global one. We all depend upon each other. We ourselves are one, but amongst many others. And so we need to act together and take into account the social and territorial aspects and impacts of our actions. Thank you. Madun, on to you. Please, what is your takeaway?
Yeah, thank you very much. I learned a lot, and I'm so happy to see so much solidarity. And I trust that if we need to take action, and we need to take that action together. The world is so much interlinked and interdependent now.
Thank you very much. Fabienne, le mot de la fin?
Thank you very much, Fabienne. The last word.
Else has said. I think we have everything we need in the people that are collected here and that are on this journey. So I think be brave and ambitious and work together to actually be the change that we all know we need to see.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. I think we can applaud them. They were wonderful. Merci à vous.